Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Rawson Hill. I'm the author of The 3 Rules of Everyday Magic and the picture book You'll Find Me. And today I'm going to do a presentation on symbolism and how to create a literary symbol. So we have a lot to cover in 15 minutes. This has been adapted from a 45-minute class, so let's get started. These are the books I'm going to be using examples of literary symbols from. Symbolism is a spectrum, and on the very smallest end of the spectrum, we have figurative language like metaphors and similes, and then we have the objective correlative next, which is itself a spectrum that includes objects as a symbol of a person, objects as a symbol of a specific emotion, relationship, or attitude. And then separate from that, we have the thematic symbol, which is a very involved symbol. And then, of course, allegory on the far end of the spectrum, where everything is a symbol. So let's start with the objective correlative, because I'm assuming you all know how to do metaphors and similes. This comes from Rosalind Eve's Writing with Emotion, the objective correlative, and I suggest that you read the whole blog for yourself, because I don't have time to go through all of the amazing examples she gives. Objective correlative is basically in a tool in your show don't tell toolkit. Rather than showing us the physical symptoms of emotion or telling us what the character feels, an author gives us an object, a physical thing, a landscape, etc., and endows that with meaning so that we're able to recognize what the character feels and, more importantly, feel it ourselves. So let's start with objective correlative, just a small objective correlative on a scene scale. So these objective correlatives might only last for a couple sentences, a few paragraphs, maybe one scene or one chapter, but they don't really go beyond that. So the way that you do an objective correlative like this is you introduce the symbol, and immediately when you introduce it, you give it meaning somehow, and then you do what I call it, you twist it. So you basically introduce this metaphor, this simile, this symbol of how your character is feeling, and then you just dig it a little bit deeper to really get a gut punch in, so that it goes from just reading about it introduces the symbol and gives it meaning. Dad leans right, mom leans left, I span the distance, okay? So we get this visual of a bridge, but then he gives it a twist. He just twists that knife like a bombed out bridge. And that tells us so much more about what the relationship between his mom and dad is and how he feels about it, okay? It's that gut punch. So plot-wide objective correlatives are when you take this idea of an objective correlative and you spread it through the entire manuscript. And that's where you get an object as a symbol of a person, a relationship, or an attitude of misbelief. So here's how you set it up. First, you have to introduce the symbol, obviously. And then you have to give it meaning, repeat it throughout the book, break it, and resolve it. And we're going to go through all of these steps, okay? So one objective correlative that I love is in Where the Watermelons Grow by Cindy Baldwin. She uses heat as a symbol for the pressure that Della feels in relationship to her mother's psychotic break. I don't have time to read these, so you're going to have to pause the video if you would like to read it on your own. But in red, we see where the symbol of heat is immediately introduced, and then in orange, where she first really gives the heat meaning. And where she makes it meaningful. So we're going to compile a list of ways to make a symbol meaningful. So remember, when you're making a symbol meaningful, you want to be subtle, okay? A really done symbol won't be recognized as symbol until closer to the end of the book. So just because you're making the symbol meaningful early on in the story, you don't have to do it in a way that's recognizable right at the moment in the first reading. Upon second read, you want your reader to recognize, oh, that this is a symbol, but on the first read through, you don't want them to be, banged over the head with it quite, if that makes sense. So ways to make a symbol meaningful. If you go back and read that bit from Where the Watermelons Grow, Cindy links heat to the main problem of the book, and that's a way to make the symbol meaningful. She also has linked it to an important plot point or turning point. We instinctively feel when a story is changing. We know when we're about to hit that turning point, that midpoint. We can feel it in our guts. So if you allow that moment, that momentum to carry the weight of imbuing your object with meaning, your reader might not know you're doing it at first, but it's going to feel organic by the end. Another way to make a symbol more meaningful is just to repeat it over and over again. And this is going to come naturally because you have to repeat the symbol. It has to show up several times in your story for it to really be a symbol, right? So repetition is a pretty natural way to make your symbol more meaningful. So in the 3 rules of everyday magic, we have a few ways that Kate makes the symbol of the almond orchard meaningful. And in one way she does this is that she writes a poem about herself, but she mentions the almond orchard. And so she draws that connection herself. And so that sort of cements it for us. And then of course she uses the turning point too. So other ways to make a symbol more meaningful: proximity. If it's always like in the room, so if it's something that's in their bedroom or their house and they're always picking it up, that's a way to make it more meaningful because it's always kind of around. Or if it's, you know, the almond orchard is right next door in the 3 rules of everyday magic. Have the character connect it to themselves in some way. Have them say, I feel like that, you know, object or whatever. And they can come right out and say it, and your reader still very likely won't automatically go, oh, that's a symbol. But if you carry it through the rest of the book, it's going to work. So after you've introduced it, made it meaningful, repeated it, you have to break it. This seems almost a universal part of a plot-wide symbol. When you don't break the symbol in some way, it just doesn't work well. It's not nearly as powerful. I think this is because, especially when a symbol is representing a character or a character arc, or a relationship, something fundamental, it's going to face the same kind of arc as the character. So when the character is breaking, or their false beliefs are breaking down, or their heart is breaking, they're going to that dark night of the soul, it follows that if this symbol is tracking with them, that it's going to break as well. So here are some examples of things being broken. The most famous example is from the Glass Menagerie when Jim breaks that unicorn's horn off, right? I mean, that's just the gold standard, right? So here's more ways that you can make a symbol meaningful. You can link it to important backstory. This is what's done with the gun in As Brave as You. It's linked to important backstory with Grandpa. You can link it to an important relationship. You know, you can do this by having that important relationship, that important person give it as a gift or something, okay? That immediately makes that object important, meaningful. So those are the steps for creating an objective correlative that goes through the whole book. Now we have the thematic symbol, and the only reason that I've separated the 2 of them out, because you can have a really involved objective correlative through the whole plot of your book that isn't quite a thematic symbol, but is really, really close. The difference between a plot-wide objective correlative and a thematic symbol, in my opinion, is there's one step that is added to a thematic symbol. So let's learn what that is. First of all, let's talk about a thematic symbol. A thematic symbol is a literary symbol that subtly and slowly weaves through the entire book until near the climax, when all the pieces come together and we understand its true importance in illustrating the theme and realization of the main character. The symbol becomes indelibly bonded to that theme in our mind, and when we think of the story, the symbol comes back to us strongest, representing the whole thing. So I'm going to be using Sweep, and the thematic symbol in Sweep are eggs and nests, and bird cages in As Brave as You. These are both excellent books that I recommend everyone go and read to just really get a feel for how the authors did this. So here are the steps for creating a thematic symbol. You're going to introduce it, make it meaningful, repeat it, break it. Here's the new step, define it, and then resolve it. Once again, I don't have time to read through the examples that I give you here. So go ahead and pause the video if you want to read through each one to get a better feeling of how the author is doing it. So the authors introduce the symbol, they make it meaningful, In those examples of ways they made it meaningful, we get one more way to make a symbol meaningful, which is to link it to a surprise or a secret. Okay, then they repeat the symbol through the book. They break the symbol, okay? And then they define the symbol. What does it mean to define the symbol? It means they verbalize the theme, okay? So usually when you're doing theme, you get one or two chances to really come out and say what the theme is without banging your reader over the head with it. And so if you use a symbol, this is your opportunity to verbalize the theme and kind of say what you want to say about it. So I am going to read the shorter excerpt here from Sweep. I am an egg, Miss Bloom smiled. How could I forget? Only I'm not sure that's the real answer. Nan handed her the book. When I read it now, I see a different answer. The riddle isn't about an egg, it's about a bird. Miss Bloom's smile deepened. She looked proud. Perhaps it is both, she suggested. Perhaps we are each of us an egg that becomes a bird, children who become parents. When I first met you, you were a child in need of care, and now you are caring for others. And so the whole book is about protection and how we start off needing to be protected so that we can then go on and protect others. The object, the symbolic object. And you'll notice that there are some similarities here and some differences. So let's take a look at what we can learn from this graph that I made of the data. So here we have introduce it. And you'll notice that in Sweep, they introduce the symbol on page 1, but in As Brave as You, they don't introduce it until almost a third of the way through the book. It's really the end of the first act. I think you have to introduce the object, the symbolic object, in the first act, but if it's on the last page of the first act, that's fine. It still works. They give it meaning. You'll notice that in As Brave as You, they give it meaning on the very next time they mention it. But in Sweep, they mention it a few times before they really make it meaningful. So just be aware that it doesn't have to be like immediate to make it meaningful. And then, of course, we have some repetition in there. We have break it. You'll notice break it is at a few different places in the manuscript. In As Brave as You, it's really at the last 10%, but in Sweep, it's at like the beginning of the third act. So break it generally happens end of the second act, beginning of the third act. Define it always comes after break it, okay? But you'll see it's just really has to be in the third act. And then resolve it comes very close to the end. You really want to bring that symbol back in your last few pages, if at all possible. You'll notice that we've got these interesting clusters here that I have circled in red, and I'm going to talk to you about those on the next thing. So those clusters around the 50 to 75% mark of the books. In As Brave as You, I didn't graph this one, but the gun does this as well. The egg and resulting bird in Sweep, and the house that's as big as a bird cage in As Brave as You. So these are times when the symbol gets to have a scene that is centered around it, or a chance to become real and bigger than life. So in As Brave as You, the thematic symbol are bird cages, but there's a scene, and there's a couple scenes, but there's one big scene with this abandoned house where they found lots of bird cages, but birds live in this abandoned house. It's like a giant bird cage, and they end up doing something that scares the birds so bad that they bust through the roof and they bust out of this giant bird cage, abandoned house. And so it's this chance for a bird cage to become, bigger than life. In Sweep, we have an entire chapter that's all just about finding an egg and the bird that hatches from it, and it's flying around, the rafters. In both books, or larger than life or its own character. So let's talk about how to choose a powerful symbol. You want to choose your symbol wisely. It has to be natural to the story. Some things can be made natural to the story, you know, if you give the right backstory, but there's other things that are always going to be out of place. You know, you're not going to want to have a snowball in Hawaii be your thematic symbol or whatever, right? It's not going to work. Consider associations already inherent to the object. So if we think about the heat and where the watermelons grow, heat already has this inherent meaning of pressure and stickiness and just, oh, it's all over. So heat works for feeling emotional pressure a lot more than cold would, right? When using a natural object, be aware that you cannot shoehorn any meaning onto it. It already comes with specific traits and facts. You want to exploit those rather than trying to make the object bend to your will. Okay, like with the birds and the eggs in Sweep. He exploited a bird's protective instinct over its eggs for the symbol instead of just trying to shoehorn something else onto birds. In general, a relationship is best symbolized by man-made objects because then the character can break it itself instead of nature breaking it, which of course is symbolic of how the character's choices are breaking the relationship. And of course we have the gun and as brave as you, and that really powerful scene where, you know, the grandpa takes apart the whole gun and has it on the table and he's just crying, and grandma comes in and throws the whole thing in the trash. And it's so powerful because he's taken the gun apart himself and not put it back together. Natural objects work best when you want to be able to see several different things in an object depending on where you are in the story. So if you want your character to look at the object and see something about themselves in it, you know, you want to reveal more about the character and their character arc as they look at the object. Natural objects work really well for that. So final thoughts, use a symbol and do it on purpose. Okay, this isn't something that only great literary minds can do. You have the tools and you can plan to do it. Okay, don't think that you just have to leave this up to your subconscious. It is something that you can do, I promise. So yeah, it was great being here and good luck.